Hi everyone, it's Friday, so therefore it is time for Top 5 Friday. And this week the theme is for the top 5 Nintendo 64 games which I believe are underrated. This theme came courtesy of Chibi Tonks, who left a comment on last week's video. So if you have a suggestion for next week's theme, leave a comment in the section below, and if it is chosen even, I'll give you a shout out. So starting off then with number 5, I've chosen Worms Armageddon. Worms Armageddon, I think, is an underrated game because it's not as widely known and it's also not as widely available. It's one of the, I wouldn't say rare games, but it's one of the more uncommon games. If you're here in the PAL region, it's quite easy to get hold of if you pay a fair price. But I believe in North America, it's one of the more rarer games to get hold of. So I think it's underrated in the sense that it's really fun in multiplayer mode. It's easy to pick up and play. If you've played any of the other Worms games before, you'll know straight away what you're doing in this game. And I think it's a lot of, just a general lot of fun to play. So in number 4 place, this one might surprise a few people. This one is Turok 3. So not Turok 1, 2 or any of the other Rage Wars or whatever it was. I think Turok 3 is really underrated. The reason why I think this one's underrated is because the previous Turok games, they did okay, they had their own sort of sense and style, but this one came out quite late in the Nintendo 64's life. The reason why I think it's underrated is a lot of people talked about the frame rate being a little bit slow, and also the series pretty much being finished by this point because they're getting ready to go on to the next gen consoles. Turok 3 is actually a really fun game to play, and I'd actually say it's probably got the best graphics of any Nintendo 64 game. The first time I saw this game, actually, a video of it, I actually thought it was a PC game because the graphics, obviously it's not going to look like current gen stuff, but for the time it's a really crisp, clear graphics on it, and I just think it's fun. Yeah, it slows down a little bit, but the actual graphics and the gameplay is really fun to play. So that one was number 4 on my list. In at number 3, I've chosen this one's Legacy of Darkness. This is not the first Castlevania game. With Legacy of Darkness, I think this one's perhaps underrated. I think what really killed off Castlevania on the Nintendo 64 was the first Castlevania game, so I think there's not too many people that actually went out of their way to play this one because of just how bad and how glitchy the first one was. With this one, they corrected a lot of the bugs. It's a really great story in there. But the really cool thing about this game is it actually features the entire game. The first cartridge, so it features Castlevania on the Nintendo 64 first one. It features the full game on there as well. So it's a really huge game. There's loads to do in it. It will take you a long time to complete. I really like the storyline on it, and it's not a game that comes up in many conversations about one of the better games to play. So I think it's definitely underrated in that sense. So number 2 on my list is Mischief Makers. This game is criminally underrated, and I think a lot of people are probably expecting this to be number 1 on my list because I've talked about this before as being a game that I think is really underrated. I think what happened is when the Nintendo 64 came out, a lot of the developers wanted to straight away move into 3D games, which is why there's not that many sort of 2D games on the Nintendo 64. This is one of the hidden gems, I'd say, on the system. If you haven't already played it, go out and get hold of a copy of this. It's not that hard to find. The prices are creeping up on it a little bit recently, but it's definitely an underrated game. It's loads of fun to play. The boss fights are incredible on it. And I don't know anyone that's played this game and has not enjoyed it, so that's why it's number 2 on my list. So as I said before, I think a lot of people are expecting that to be number 1 on my list, but I've actually, when I was looking at my collection, it was really difficult to decide which games were going to be in my top 5 because I looked at my entire collection. I thought which games would fill into the theme, which ones do I think there's a difference between the game being underrated and underappreciated. So this is a game that I think is actually underrated. So number 1 on my list is Hybrid Heaven. Now the Nintendo 64 is really spare when it comes to RPGs. Hybrid Heaven is a really cool game. If you like sci-fi games, if you like RPGs, then you're probably going to love this. And this is a game that not too many people ever bring up in conversations. You don't see many people making videos about it, doing reviews of it. It is a really cool game. The storyline's about sort of like a government underground sort of base. You go in as a hero, but I won't want to ruin the story too much, but it's got aliens, it's got investigations, all kinds of crazy stuff going on in it, but it's a really solid game. It also uses the expansion pack. However, I'd say if you play this game, don't activate the expansion pack mode in it. If you do, the frame rate slows down a hell of a lot. This is one of the first games that used the expansion pack, so they hadn't quite worked out how to do it, you know, to its best capacity. So what I'd say with that one is when you get hold of it, when you play it, then turn off the high res mode, just play it in standard def. The graphics, you know, they're not the most exciting, it's mostly in an underground base, but the combat and everything's really good. The fighting sequences are really in-depth, and you can actually build up specific body parts. If you've got certain ways you like attacking, then you can focus on building up, you know, your arms, your legs, and so on. There's also, you know, grappling moves, everything. It's a really, really cool game, definitely underrated. So that's why it is my #1 underrated game. So what do you think of my list? What would you consider to be your top 5 Nintendo 64 underrated games? If you let me know in the comments below, and also, like I said at the start of the video, if you've got a suggestion for next week's theme, then let me know what theme you'd like to see me doing next week's Top 5 Friday. But until then, see you later.